Hello, and thank you for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras here with ILTV's Morning Briefing.
The Israeli police, the IDF, and the Shin Bet arrested a Palestinian suspect in Ramallah over the weekend who is thought to have horrifically murdered 19-year-old Israeli Ori Ansbacher in Jerusalem on Thursday. Ansbacher was a national service volunteer from Tekoa who worked in the Ye'elim Youth Center, but on Thursday evening she was brutally stabbed to death in Jerusalem's Ein Yael forest. She was reported missing earlier in the day and was allegedly found naked with multiple stab wounds. While 29-year-old Arafat al-Rafaya has since been named as the suspect in connection with the murder, and the Shin Bet charged that he left Hebron where he lives with a knife, saw the victim in the forest, and killed her. Further details are still under wraps and a gag order is in place, however, as unsubstantiated reports and details have already been posted across the net. In fact, due to the public attention on both sides, Israeli police had to battle both Israelis and Palestinians in the case. First, Palestinian extremists rioted and tried to prevent security services from making an arrest by throwing pipe bombs, stones, and Molotov cocktails as Israeli units arrived in Ramallah. Additionally, from the other side, right-wing Israeli settlers clashed with security forces by trying to block roads in Jerusalem on Saturday while chanting "The nation demands revenge," referring to the death penalty. Right-wing lawmakers like Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked even already called for the death penalty as well, and protests broke out across the country, including in Tel Aviv, calling for the same thing. As of now, only the demolition of al-Rafaya's home has been set, though. Meanwhile, Ansbacher's mother, Naama, eulogized her daughter as a beautiful writer and a poet, and rather than calling for the death penalty or revenge, she called on people to carry out acts of kindness and to, quote, add light to the world in Ori's memory. Multiple rallies and vigils were also held in Hebron, Tel Aviv, Tekoa, and Jerusalem. Now, the latest election polls are out again, but according to the survey published by Channel 12 on Saturday, it looks like Prime Minister Netanyahu's Likud party is likely to win out, even if rivals Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid join forces and take more seats in the election. In fact, the results of the poll gave a Gantz-Lapid unity bloc 36 seats in the Knesset to the Likud's 32 should elections be held today, but it added that that wouldn't necessarily be enough to form a government. The poll was conducted by Midgam and iPanel on February 7th, and it surveyed over 500 people for a margin of error of 4.4%. What resulted was a pretty balanced turnout no matter what, though. If Gantz and Lapid unite their Israel Resilience and Yesh Atid parties, they may actually beat the Likud in national elections, but there would be very few natural partners left in the Knesset with which they could form a 61-seat majority bloc necessary for a coalition. Further, if Yesh Atid and Israel Resilience don't unite, which is more likely at this point, the poll found that they'd be largely in exactly the same situation. Also, a poll released by Channel 13 indicated nearly the exact same findings. Now, as for the remaining factions, following the failure to unite between the Jewish Home and the National Union parties over the weekend, polls put every other party from the New Right to the Meretz with 8 or fewer mandates. Most, however, struggled to even pass the electoral threshold of 3.25%. In other election news, on Thursday, Israeli Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit ruled that now no political party members can publish images where they appear with active duty soldiers in the IDF, at least until after April elections. But while the ruling applies to all candidates, it comes in response to a petition filed by the Labour Party, which argued that Likud party head and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is posting such photos too often. The petition reads that these images, quote, mislead the voting public, adding that the Labour Party believes the Prime Minister is making cold, cynical, and narrow use of the IDF and its soldiers, and he is blinding the public into thinking that the IDF is part of his and the Likud's election campaign. Likud has since responded, however, that the nature of the photos is informative and serves the public's right to know. On a related note, Israeli authorities are also still fighting the social media and other online platforms over the lack of formal filters designed to prevent fake news and similar such content from meddling in the national elections. Twitter has vowed to introduce new tools to add transparency to political posts and ads, and has already been removing hundreds of fake and manipulative accounts from its network. Facebook has made similar promises, but their filters haven't yet been rolled out, and Israeli officials are demanding that they be initiated as soon as possible. Then finally, there's tech giant Google, which has just announced plans to go even one step further than its competitors by completely suspending all user-tailored content completely until after elections on April 9th. Israeli ad companies were reportedly notified last week. Typically, when people think of secular and liberal Israeli citizens in policy, they think of Tel Aviv. And typically, they wouldn't be wrong. But there is nothing typical about this latest news coming out now from Tiberias. The tourism-centric city situated on the banks of the Sea of Galilee has just now unveiled for the first time ever buses that run on the Sabbath. And better yet, the buses are free of cost. Granted, only 2 buses are running right now along just one route to and from the promenade, but recently elected Mayor Ron Kobi promises that this first line is just the first of many. The initiative was put together by Meir Kobi and the Noat Tnua organization, and this pilot will have to run successfully on its own for a time before more routes are added. The announcement has been met with mixed feelings, however, as 22% of the city is made up of ultra-Orthodox Jews who heavily argued against the plan for violating the status quo in the city. But Kobi has spoken often about fighting for all the residents of the city, both before and after his November election to office. And in a statement earlier in the week, Kobi also explained again that the bus line initiative did not come from thoughts against the religious, but rather, quote, from a social struggle so that the people in Tiberias who can't afford a private car or taxi will be able to reach the sea on Shabbat. He then added that residents weren't the only ones complaining, saying that, quote, over the past month we've received complaints from tens of thousands of visitors to the city's promenade over the lack of public transportation on Shabbat. The tourism centers in the city will continue to remain open on Shabbat as befitting for a central, progressive, and enlightened tourist city.
That's all for now, so remember to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast.